Hello, everybody. Welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Predator Badlands, one of the most divisive films, especially amongst the fan community when it comes to this movie's release, with many people, including myself, saying that this really isn't much of a Predator film at all. If you want to talk about it on the merits of it just being a generic action film with some sci-fi elements to it, I think that you can maybe make the argument that it is a decent film in those areas. But when you think about it from a Predator film perspective, at the very least in comparison to that first Predator film, something that all the other films have always been trying to recapture and just never really being able to get anywhere close to it, this film also fails quite a bit, trying to humanize the Predator all that much when, again, general fans mostly just want the Predator to be the Predator without having to have the bad guy persona be explained and have us empathize with the bad guy, because this is now becoming this modern Hollywood trope that is being put forth in so many products and so many things all around the globe. And honestly, it's gotten to the point now where how far away are we from a xenomorph having conversations with other xenomorphs about their family and about how they don't like how dad doesn't take them seriously or anything like that. I mean, honestly, that is the direction that we're going in, and that's the direction that Predator Badlands goes into as well. And I totally grant people might like some of the action sequences in the film and some of the other visual effects and everything. And hey, if that's what you need to be happy, if that's all that you need to be happy, then hey, whatever floats your boat makes you happy. And hey, box office wise, we can say it's definitely also a bit of a mixed bag as well. Despite what the shill media will try to tell you, they'll try and tell you, and you're probably going to have these comments in the comment section down below as well about how, well, you're glossing over the fact that this is the best opening weekend domestically for a Predator movie in history. That's, of course, when you ignore things like inflation, and when you take into account that, you actually have a little film called Alien vs. Predator that actually has a much better opening weekend. Not to mention, of course, even with inflation not being a factor, you at the very least could also look to the fact that ticket sales and ticket prices have changed quite a bit since the 80s, right, when the franchise originally began, which means that, yeah, you have, obviously, an audience showing up for this movie. The film is definitely doing better than expected as far as what the initial projections for the weekend were, but Disney still spent over $100 million on this movie, and that's, of course, if we take them at their word, if we actually believe and buy into the reported box office budget and typical marketing costs. As we all know, when it comes to Disney, 20th Century Studios, as a part of Disney, they almost always overspend on their products, especially when it comes to the marketing costs. So a bit of a mixed bag. We'll talk about why it is a mixed bag and what it is that we are seeing here at the box office. Also, we have the holdovers from films like Regretting You, which had a very strong hold of a 9% week 2 to week 3 drop. Very, very good numbers for that film. Black Phone 2 also continuing to hold pretty well. 36% hold there in its 4th weekend of release. So again, still holding out quite a bit. And then we also have newcomers, Sarah's Oil from Amazon MGM Studios with only $4.4 million. Not a lot of information on these last two as far as budgets. I've heard some, I basically did as much research as I could, and the best I could find for Sarah's Oil was that it might have cost about $18 million to make. If that is the case, 4.4 is not that great of a start. Again, we'll have to wait and see what it does next weekend. And then Nuremberg from Sony Pictures, really big cast, really big names within the cast. No budgets being reported as of yet. This is coming out of Sony Picture Classics, so this is supposed to be the more independent sub-brand, right, of Sony Pictures, which, again, if it's an independent film, means that the chances of the budget being a lot lower than your typical major Hollywood studio productions would seem very likely. But then also you keep in mind the cast in the film, and so that could easily balloon that budget up more so than what it might need to in order if it's going to have any success, especially with a $4 million opening weekend, right? So we're going to continue to talk about these films, look at the total box office for these films, and again, a little bit of the, I think, debate going on right now, especially amongst fans. Again, let's go ahead and just drive right into it, right? So Predator Badlands, if we go over on Critic List, I think, honestly, the most honest platform when it comes comes to the discussions about this movie. If you go to sites like Rotten Tomatoes, you're going to get a very corporate understanding of this movie, right? All the corporate shills are loving the film, and then you have that high audience score as well. But remember, when it comes to the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, you can't trust that thing either, simply because of the fact that they literally have changed the way that that system works several times over in reaction to trying to protect movies. That by its nature means Rotten Tomatoes is not in good faith as far as what information it's presenting and putting out there, and so therefore nothing that comes from that site can really be taken with any seriousness whatsoever. Different than a site like Critic where it is community run. It is not really subject to bot attacks in the same way that Rotten Tomatoes is. You know how Rotten Tomatoes, you always see those very clearly almost bot-like responses of, single stars for quote-unquote review bombing, but then you also have review bombing in the other direction where you've got those 5-star reviews with no content whatsoever from newer accounts. It happens, right, a lot in those places. You don't really see the same thing happen here on Critic List. Not only do you have a much smaller user base, but also the way in which you sign up for the platform does mean that they are being a little bit more cautious when it comes to people just coming in and posting random reviews. Not to mention, because this is not a system that's been around for a very, very long time, it is one that I think is probably just a little bit harder to crack. But also, look ahead and look at these numbers here, right? So as of right now, only 47 people have actually seen the film to review it, and the rating system over here has it currently at a decent, about a 51% score. And this makes sense to me, right? If you ask a lot of people, both fans and non-fans alike, though I definitely think that non-fans of Predator are probably going to like the film more than actual fans, because I know that one of the biggest critiques I have of the film is that it just is not really a Predator movie, right, in the way that we understand Predator to be. But with that being said, you see a very divisive audience here, right? I gave it a 15% heinous score. That is coming straight from the fact that this is supposed to be a Predator film, and really it just doesn't quite get there. It's a decent fantasy sci-fi film, but really a not good Predator film in any way. But clearly there is a lot of thoughts on this movie, right, with the fact that, again, 47 people have seen it. So again, not the biggest numbers that we've seen on this site within the first few days of release, but also, right, showing you that this is very much a 50-50 love-hate type movie. If you dive into the reviews themselves, you'll see a very similar story, right? 15% for me. Even Blaine, who tends to like some pretty bad movies, gave it a 38% bogus score because, yeah, ultimately, this is just nonstop deconstruction, right? We are just tired of classic characters and classic IPs being deconstructed so much that it loses any sense of the identity that made the first film, at the very least, and some would even argue the second film and some of the other films that are those guilty pleasures in the franchise. It starts to just, again, kind of spit in the face and shatter the lore a bit when it comes to those stories. Why is it especially that we had a movie where we got to see the guy's face for the entirety of it? Again, just reminds you that they are just trying whatever they can to basically change everything that you know about a character and that you like about a character in order to make it into a modern Hollywood movie in certain ways. You do also have a lot of decent scores, some boguses, but then you've got these rad scores coming out as well, right? So you got a couple of rads coming in here, especially when it comes to reviews that actually have review content on there. Just, again, makes it that much more reliable, I think, when it comes to being real people putting out real thoughts. So you've got a bunch of rads coming out there. You do, of course, got the heinous and bogus scores, some more decent scores, a lot of bogus scores, some decents. But as you can see, a pretty healthy mix of different reviews, right? Some going crazy and saying it's a 90% most excellent film. That's insane. Or in the case of C-Bizzle, you have his at 85%. So it's a bit of a range, right? So I wouldn't go as far as, a 0%, or I wouldn't also obviously go nearly as high in those 90s, right? Again, for me, it was still a bad Predator movie, but it's a very mixed bag. And I think that you were seeing that here. I think that you're seeing some honest discussions happen as well in the comments section. And I think because of this battle that we're kind of seeing, it's explaining what's going on here with the box office, right? It made $40 million domestic and roughly $40 million international for a total starting point of about $80 million globally. Now, keep in mind, right, in average releases, right? When it comes to what most films make after their opening weekend, if the film has an average run from this point forward, then we're looking at it making upwards of $240 million. This comes from the fact that most films tend to make about a third or maybe 30% of their entire global box office in their opening weekend. And so you just math that out. Next weekend, theoretically, it should be able to, next weekend, obviously, we would expect the film to be able to cross $100 million, but by the end of the run itself, right, by the end of everything, it should be able to make up about $240-ish million or so. The break even on this film is a bit high, right? It is about $315 million. It's because of a $105 million budget. You take into account typical marketing spend on a movie, and then also the splits between domestic and international, and that is the reason why you need to make roughly $315 million just to break even. Every film can have little variations here and there, but that's also what we have our running tally in our chart, which we'll get into in a second. But again, overall, it's a decent start, better than what was expected. I don't think anyone was expecting it to be this high, but even so, it is still not all that high, and I think that ultimately the film will end up losing money when everything is said and done. We'll know a lot more by next weekend, but remember, we've got a lot of films that are about to be coming out over the next few weeks that are going to take up a lot of space, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of space for films like this. Regretting You is still hanging around quite a well, right? So $70.9 million is where that film currently stands. Black Phone 2 at $120 million there, so still matching up pretty well with the original film. Sarah's Oil at $4.4 million. Don't know all that much about it. Again, I think it's about Faith and Fortune, the new Zachary Levi film, $4.4 million from him. And then Nuremberg, again, this is from Sony Picture Classics, so it is the independent brand, so not likely costing a lot of money, but with that cast, maybe a bit more. $4 million, not the best start for that film. Let's go over the shots because we love Chauncey on OMB Reviews, just so we can get an idea of where this film is in comparison to some of the others, right? So an $80 million start. Again, as I said, that means that we're looking on an average box office run, getting it to upwards of $240 million. So we'll have to wait and see what those week 2 numbers are before we can make any firm projections. But with that $105 million budget, that means a total cost of about $157.5 million, right? You take your total budget, multiply that by 1.5, that gets you budget plus marketing. So total cost about 157, probably a lot higher than that. As we all know, Disney, notorious for overspending, especially on marketing cost, which means if you look at the break even, somewhere between 262 and 315, with most numbers these days going closer to that 3x number because of how much money is made internationally versus any other marketplace. We have those, again, domestic international numbers in so far, and at $80 million, that means the film is currently at $119 million in the red. Again, the reason why being because it's only gotten 55% of the domestic and then 40% of the international, and that's not even including any potential releases in China, where those numbers would obviously come in a bit less. So this film did get a release in China, so we don't have those official numbers on thenumbers.com, but once we do, I'll try and get those into the chart, and if there's a large portion coming from it, that ultimately means much less revenue from them, right? Much less net profits and net gains for them going forward. So Predator Badlands, a bit of a mixed bag as of right now, looking like it's going to end with a box office negative score, right? It's looking like it's going to have a financial loss. Not going to be the biggest loss of the year, though. We can say that much at the very least, but just how much is it going to lose? Is it going to be maybe 50 million, maybe 70 million? Hard to say at this point. We'll see if the audience actually shows up next weekend, or just, again, if this thing has any life overseas beyond just what we're seeing currently in the weekend in front of us, right? As you can see, the vast majority of markets it has now finally released in, with markets like Portugal coming out soon, Russia coming out soon, and that's about it, right? And you're not likely going to see a whole lot of box office from those two markets, as those are not heavy markets in general, let alone for these kinds of movies. So not looking, again, that great for the film, but hey, credit where credit is due. You got number 1 start at the box office and did better than what most people were anticipating. Shelby Oaks from Chris Stuckman is, slowed down quite a bit. It's just, again, had the fans show up and no one else is really showing interest in it. I think you're now starting to see some of those reviews coming out that are being a lot more critical of the film now that it's been out for a while and people have had a chance to actually go and watch it. Again, depending on what the budget was, what the marketing was, which is still a question mark, this film either has broken even and making profit or hasn't quite gotten there yet. I think when all is said and done, he'll probably have like a few million in profit, which is, again, good for him, but whether that says anything about a future, I don't know at this point. Springsteen, the biopic that no one was expecting. I don't know how many were asking for it either. Still $65 million in the red. Regretting You, doing much better down the line. It's already, even this early on in its release, getting close to an average run at the box office. So I think this film is tracking to be able to reach its break-even point, make a little bit of profit too. So that's definitely a much better start than where it was in its opening weekend, which was atrocious. So kudos to them for having strong holds down the line. Black Panther 2 still holding well, so still adding to its overall profits. Tron Ares still a massive flop for Disney, and all of the other films are pretty much exactly where they were last time with no major changes. So those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Have you seen Predator Badlands? Where are you on that side of the debate? Do you think it's a good film, a bad film? As I said before, I think that it's a mediocre film overall and then a really bad Predator movie, and that's kind of where I'm leaning in with this one, not to mention, of course, making me very, very sleepy with how bored I was in many of the side plot storylines that really didn't have any interesting points to them at all. So let me know your thoughts about that and anything else I mentioned or didn't mention in the comment section down below. If you liked this video, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed Sunday. And as always, God bless. And now let me give a shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my Patreon members, Father Luca Illich, hail to you, Father, and also to Miss Mountain Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Mountain Muses. She is very lovely, great, awesome Catholic faith-based content over there. You'll also find over on Subscribestar my member Matt317. He is on Twitch with the same channel name, Matt317. Shout out to you, good sir. And also to a longtime member here, Mr. Roy, my Chosen of Valhalla member here on YouTube. Mr. Roy, thank you for always hanging out and for always being a part of this channel. It does mean a lot, as well as it does for all of my Chosen of Valhalla members. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream or video, or if you want it listed in that list that was playing just before, just now, check out the top link in the video description below. You'll find out how to get those types of shout outs at the end of every live stream and video. Not to mention, you get access to bonus video content and also access to a Discord server where there are a couple of channels on there where I do giveaways every single month. In fact, I do multiple giveaways every single month. I try to make it so that I'm giving away Blu-rays and 4Ks that make up at least 4 or 5 different giveaways. Sometimes I have to put them in all towards the very end because back in the school session, of course, now means that I'm going to be a little bit more delayed there. So if you want access to things like that, if you want access to a great community, you guys seriously are all amazing and beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.